Hello, hello, hello. How are we all doing? I hope everybody's fine. Today I have to read it off screen because the ink in my printer died. Oh, somebody just turned the lights off outside. I guess it's going to rain again. So, yeah, I have to read it off screen, so I'm going to look like I'm staring deeply at you, but I'm really not because I'm going to be reading it off the screen. So today we are doing York Tower and the Knock of Alves. And this thing has been driving me demented all day. The way I do these is I'll open everything I can online about the building or the location that we're doing, and then I will just screen grab and go through and edit it all together so that it kind of makes sense. Well, by doing that this morning, I had 53 pages. But because a lot of them are just repeating and repeating and repeating, I managed to edit it down to 7. Then, when I go to print it off, I realise that my printer ink is currently invisible. Sorry, I've got to turn him down a bit. He's a bit loud. So yeah, I realised that my printer ink was almost invisible. So I have to read it off screen. And I really hope you don't mind. I'm just going to open it on the other page so I can see comments on both sides. And yes, seeing as the weather is miserable today, I decided we'd do the war paint for a change. So if when you've seen me with my glasses doing these things and you're like, I know her face, you might recognise it a bit more like this. This is the made up and going out face. So here we go. We'll leave. Is disturbed quiet enough? Is the music quiet enough? Hey Maggie. If the music's quiet enough, I'll just carry on. But if it's too loud, let me know and I will turn it down a wee bit more, okay? So, the Knock of Alves is a small wooded hill that lies 3 miles to the west of Elgin and rises to 335 feet or 102 metres above sea level. Its summit is today marked by York Tower, a 3-storey octagonal folly erected in 1827 to commemorate Prince Frederick, the Duke of York. And there is also the Forteath Mausoleum, built in 1850 as the burial place of 7 members of the Forteath family of the nearby House of Newton. The hill is the site of a hill fort with traces of vitrification. When stone has been exposed to a really high temperature and the exterior edge of the stone almost becomes like glass. It's almost, it's like volcanic glass. So like after a volcano eruption or if lightning hits the beach, that's the easiest 2 ways to get vitrified stone. Why we have 2 forts in this area, both with vitrified stone, nobody's actually answered that question for me. It makes absolutely no sense because the temperatures required to do that to the stone would kill everybody. So if anybody's ever been given a satisfactory explanation for why we have so many stones in this area that are vitrified, I would be more than willing to hear it, and I'd actually really like to hear it because nobody's ever given me a satisfactory one yet. So, the remains of the fort are now heavily mutilated and defaced and have been damaged by the building of the tower and the mausoleum, by erosion from the making of the access roads to get up the hill, by root damage from the trees and animals burrowing in, and slope wash when it rains heavy and bits of the ground fall away. And we're going to start by talking about the tower. The plans for the tower, the blueprints, are dated the 21st of June 1827, but they've not been signed by the architect, so they're not entirely sure who did the plans. According to the records I found today, they are in the possession of the present owner, whoever that is. The plaque above the entrance is inscribed, York Tower, 5th of January 1827, erected by Alexander Forteath of Newton to commemorate Frederick Augustus, Duke of York. You know that song you do at school? Oh, the grand old Duke of York? Yeah, that's the dude. Born the 16th of August 1783, died the 5th of January 1827, which is the date on the plaque for the tower. They think it might have been designed by William Robertson from Elgin. William Robertson was known to have done a lot of work for Alexander Forteath, so it kind of follows suit that it probably is him. Then we get into the details. Gothic 3-storey octagonal folly on hilltop site. Harl pointed rubble. Tooled and polished ashlar dressings. So, it's basically rubble built with fancy stones on the edges so that it holds it together better, it's stronger, and it looks nicer. Pointed headed hood moulded entrance. So the fancy bit above the door actually sticks out a bit. That's all that means. In the east face, with worn mast stops to hood molds. So the ends used to have something on them, but they're probably worn away now with weather. A single order of nail-head decoration to moulded recessed doorway. Yeah, there's dots on it too to make it look pretty. Dated plaque above the entrance is flanked by blind cruciform arrow slits. So, arrow slit, teeny weeny window. Cruciform, cross-shaped teeny weeny window. Blinded, you can't actually see in when you look through because they're false. They're just for decoration. Similar slits alternate each face, so they'll be on one side but they're not on the next, but they'll be on the one after that. On the ground floor and the first floor. In the top story, there's very long keyhole slits, so they might have a wider top and a narrower bottom. So you get the keyhole idea in the upper story. Round-headed windows on alternate faces, first and second floors. On the second floor, there is some decoration on the sills and the corbels. The corbels are the sticky-out bits that had stuff up. There's a string course all the way around and all the way up the tower that shows you where each of the different floors are on the inside. Corbelled and crenellated wall head. So the top's got sticky out bits that had it up and it looks like the top of a castle in the old medieval style. There's a small chimney stack on the roof, which you can't see because of the castle-shaped bays that stick up. So it's masked by them. And there's a flat roof and a flagpole in the centre, which, according to what I've been told and some of the research I've done today, is currently actually not a flagpole. It's a mast built inside the tower for orange. Which might explain why you have a fantastic signal when you're on the top of the hill. Inside the tower. Rubble walled interior, so they haven't fancied up the inside at all. It's the bare stone, with access to each floor by a crude wooden staircase. So it's purely a functional staircase. It's not there to look pretty. There's a small fireplace in the wall of the top room. That's all I could find on the tower. Then we moved to the mausoleum, which is next to it. Mausoleum was probably designed by Thomas Mackenzie, the architect, around 1850. It's a subterranean vault, an underground vault, shown only at the north side by a tooled rubble wall with block pedimented walled up entrance. So it's got like little fancy pillars either side of the door. The door frame is basically pillars with blocked off tops. And that's how you know it actually goes down underneath. Under the square and above that, there's a square railed enclosure. Rectangular tomb in centre of the enclosure on a stepped base. Bottom's got steps on it. With carved thistles, apparently. I've no been, so I haven't seen it. There's inscribed polished granite tablets on it. So much the same as Patrick Sellers and stuff. Like I call them the New Orleans box graves that we have at the cathedral. So when you see the table stones, but they're like the sides are filled in as well, like we have at the cathedral, that's the kind of grave that we're talking about. Rectangular tomb in the centre of enclosure on a stepped base under a shallow pyramidal shaped top. So it might be a pyramid, but it's not one of these pyramids. It's more like one of these pyramids. Very shallow one, very short one. Shaped top with angles decorated with carved thistles. Inscribed and polished, 3 tablets on each side and a single tablet at each end. So that's 8 different tablets on that tomb. Now, one document says the railings are topped with spearheads. The other one says the railings are topped with thistles. So if anybody's been, can you let me know if the railings have thistles on tops or if it's just a pointy bit? It's YouTube music. Alexander Forteath, who was born Alexander Williamson but changed his name after inheriting Newton from his uncle George Forteath. So he changed his surname to match because they were still blood family anyway. George Forteath died in 1815, and his name, along with 7 other members of the family, including Alexander himself, are on the sarcophagus, on the tomb. Now, this is the bit that drove me nuts. The fort. Yes, there's a hill fort up there too, which I had no clue. Now, this has driven me nuts because most of the details on the hill fort have been written by antiquarians from the 1800s who all like to play the old one-upmanship. And they'll correct each other by saying, well, this guy said it was that, but I'm actually saying it's this, and I'm obviously right. So I've had to sort out their little arguments to figure out what bits are actually right. So this might be a bit rambling. I've edited it as much as I can. And hopefully, because I've taken it from like 5 different books, 16 different sites, hopefully at least some of it is correct. So the fort was surveyed by the Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Scotland, or ARCAMs as I usually call them, in 1957. The innermost enclosure of the fort measured 125 feet or 38 metres if you're younger than me, from east to west, and 75 feet or 23 metres from north to south. It was marked by crest lines and boulders to the east and the south, and by a more conspicuous but still ruined remains of a wall to the west and north. This was inside a second enclosure measuring 415 feet or 126 metres by 75 feet, 23 metres. That was marked by a clear line of large facing stones along the southwest. The entrance to both enclosures is on the east side, and the smaller enclosure may have been a later structure built over the ruins of the bigger one, which was earlier. A third wall surrounded both of the inside enclosures and was represented only by tumbled stones to the east and north, but by a more substantial cliff ridge on one side, studded with stones and boulders to the west and south. Then we switched documents. 2 outer ramparts run round the lower slopes of the hill. These were made up of rubble and earth, with the inner enclosing an area measuring 150 metres or 500 feet from east to west, and 180 foot, 55 metres. You see the difference in the measurements? This is part of their one-upmanship when they're competing with their frenemies from the 1800s, from north to south. And the outer lying 18 feet or 5.5 meters further out for most of its length. So you've got the little one, the bigger one, and the biggest one. The biggest one's 18 feet outside of all the rest of them. It's traditionally believed, so they say, but I couldn't find any traces of it, that there was an early Christian church, possibly a caldane on top of the hill. Though no traces of this have been found, and I couldn't find mention of it in any other documents. It's traditionally... Start again. The fort, which occupies the whole of the higher part of the knock, is very ruinous. Some parts of the defences lie in the trees, and others are under thick heather and whins. While a modern track, a monument, a mausoleum, ploughing and quarrying have also played their parts in the mutilation of the remains. There's a trickle of stones representing a ruined wall that's much more conspicuous. The natural crest of the north flank of the rocky plateau, which forms the absolute summit of the hill, the highest point, it lies about 20 feet south of and above the spread of stones that are considered to form the north arc of wall. The southeast arcs of the walls have been removed by ploughing, and the southwest arcs have been removed by quarrying, while a smaller quarry, now in a wood, has encroached upon the north side. So it's slowly being quarried out and ploughed under. So it won't be there for much longer by the sound of it. The southwest, smaller quarry. The inner rampart encloses an area which includes the 3 stone-walled enclosures, measures 500 feet in length from east to by about 180 feet in width. Despite the damage, however, sufficient remains to show that the fort was a large and strong structure in an area where monuments of this kind are few. That report was written on the 17th of April 1957. Then we get on to the archaeological record. Did they dig a hole, and did they find? An investigation was carried out in December 1997 ahead of the laying of a power cable to serve the telecommunications mast, the Orange Tower. An area of 55.5 square metres was opened. Trench 1 was dug within the northwest sector of the interior, and Trench 2 across the defences on the northwest. A circular pit measuring 0.5 metres in diameter by 0.5 metres in depth, and a possible levelled area containing a layer of burnt material were revealed in Trench 1. 2 sherds of possible prehistoric pottery were found, one of them in the pit and the other, they say, unstratified. So it wasn't where it should have been. It was probably in some infill, could have even been lying on top of the ground, courtesy of the rabbits, etc. And they also found a bipolar quartz flake that was unstratified too, so possibly just lying on the surface. They also found window glass inside the trench, which might have come from the tower. The excavation of Trench 2 showed the defences to be obscured by slope wash. We've all seen bits of the hill fall off in different places wherever we live when the rain's really heavy, or when the rain's been consistently coming day after day after day. That's what slope wash is. There was also substantial damage from root damage from the trees and animal burrowing. The inner ditch was found to measure 3 metres in breadth and 0.7 metres deep. 3 different layers of fill were identified, so over the years it's gradually filled up. 3 big periods in time where it's had stuff deposited in to fill the gap. A site visit was conducted to determine the least damaging route for the laying of a power cable for the phone mast. The phone mast is sited within the hill fort. Yes, we know the phone mast is in the hill fort. It's inside the tower, actually, by the look of it. A trench excavated across the defences and through the interior of the fort identified one of the outer defensive ditches, a small pit containing a few sherds of prehistoric pottery and fragments of burnt bone was also located within the fort interior. I can't even speak straight. That's because I've been reading all these different documents with all this different language. It doesn't even bear a resemblance to English. That architectural dig was sponsored by Orange. Surprise, surprise. There was also a site visit from the Ordnance Survey on the 10th of December 1962 and on the 26th of January 1972. The building shows up on RAF air photographs when they first start doing that as well. The excavation, the last and youngest excavation, has been the 19th of September 2016 to the 24th of September 2016. As part of the Northern Picts project, surveys and excavations were undertaken in an area stretching from Aberdeenshire to Shetland, targeting sites that can help contextualise the character of society in the early medieval period in Northern Pictland. We're in it. In Murray, they were evaluating a series of forts in the wider environs of Burghead to attempt to construct a regional framework for the development of fortified enclosures. Knock of Alves is located to the south of Burghead, just to the west of Elgin. The summit encompasses an area of about 40 metres by 22 metres. Again, different measurements, different time periods, better or worse measuring devices. Enclosed by a possible rampart. See, it's only possible now. 2 ramparts run around the lower slopes of the hill. 6 trenches were excavated on Knock of Alves Fort between the 19th and the 24th of September 2016. A 4 metre by 4 metre trench on the summit identified 4 post holes in a line extending southwest to northeast, with a larger pit feature to the west and a further post hole in the southeast corner of the trench. A trench across the inner rampart failed to identify a definitive enclosure boundary here. In other words, they couldn't find the wall they were looking for, although the area had been affected by quarrying and animal burrows. Other trenches were placed over the outer enclosure boundaries at the base of the hill. 2 trenches verified the 2 banks and ditches visible on a land survey plan from 1957. The inner rampart was very heavily truncated by a shallow internal ditch, about 2.5 metres wide. This was all linked in, and one bit's damaging the other bit, and so on and so forth. A ditch or quarry scoop contained only fertile, sterile fills. So they did some bits here and there where they just took a scoop out with the digger to see if it was worth digging, and there was nothing worth digging. So they didn't find a lot. That archaeological investigation was funded by the University of Aberdeen, and the reports held in the archive for the University of Aberdeen. In 1997, the one where they were looking for where to lay the power cable. See what I mean about it all being choppy? There's this report says prehistoric pottery, 2 fragments of burnt bone and 2 stone objects. You see, each one has a slightly different amount of finds, which is what makes this kind of research so hard, especially when we can't go to said museums and said offices and go, here, what actually did you find? Because every report has slightly different things in it. So, in one trench towards the edge of the citadel, layers of grey silt, modern stuff that's silted up, burnt material and broken sandstone was found in a natural depression in the bedrock, which might represent an attempt at levelling the ground surface. Then, that's all that archaeological stuff done. We move on to another bit I found interesting. There's a stone circle there as well. How much can you fit on one tiny little hill? On the south side of the hill, approximately 200 metres from York Tower and the summit, is a stone circle consisting of 6 boulders of up to 1.3 metres or 4.3 foot high, arranged with an overall diameter of 10 metres or 33 foot. Beside the loch on the south side, from a book from 1924, written by my pal's great-granda or great-great-granda, H.B. Mackintosh. Beside the loch on the south side of the Knock of Alves, there stood formerly a stone circle. But that's all they included on the web page I was looking at. They didn't actually give the full quote from Mackintosh. Then in another book, it has a stone circle stands just north of a path in the wood and 200 metres south of York Tower. 5 stones are standing and 1 has fallen. There is an outlier some 7 metres to the west. The stones are about 1 metre square and 1.2 metres above the surface. So you can see as time's moved on, the stones are getting shorter because there's more build-up of leaf mould and all the rest, with it being one of the wilderness areas. It's not really wilderness, only 3 miles out of town, but tree fall and stuff like that. The diameter of the stone circle is about 7 metres in 1970. So again, different measuring devices, different accuracies. Then another book from 2 years after that, it consists of 6 rough boulders. So there's another one appeared, standing to a maximum height of 1.3 metres. So maybe it snowed heavy in the winter and it pushed the leaf mould down a bit, so it's gone from 1.2 metres to 1.3 metres. And 10 metres overall diameter. Well, that's the same as the first recording. With the interior appearing slightly dished. So inside the circle, the ground is slightly hollowed. So it is like being in a dish. The triangular top of another stone of uncertain association is visible in the east. So there's potentially another stone that's part of the circle, but it's mostly buried. But they're not entirely sure if it should be part of the circle or not. And also 2 other stones obscured by leaf mould were revealed by probing, which indicated a soil build-up of at least 0.5 metres. Now you imagine, you can see on aerial photos just how many trees are in the area. You imagine all the fallen pine needles, all the fallen leaves, fallen branches, all piling up on top of each other. Of course things like this get buried over time, especially when they're in the middle of nowhere. The alleged outlier stone in previous documents to the west is probably a fortuitous, naturally placed boulder. That's from a visit from the Ordnance Survey on the 26th of January 1972. I've maybe edited this a little too short, but that gives us nearly half an hour for questions. So if you've got any, put them in. There is a haunting documented. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, because I only found it on 2 different websites. Normally, I don't count it unless I find it on 3 different sources. So this one is listed as moving shadows at the York Tower, a haunting or manifestation, weather dependent apparently, but said to be more active on stormy nights, because they know nobody's going to be fool enough to go and stand out there on a stormy night. Further comments. Moving shadows seen darting around the tower after dark. No one really wants to investigate these dark shapes any further. Screeching and laughter have also been reported. Allegedly. By tradition, the knock is connected with the story of Macbeth and the witches. Possibly, there may be some foundation for this, as the knock is on the road between both Gownan and the blasted heath. The one, by a curious coincidence, being 3 miles east of Elgin, the other being a similar distance from Nairn. Now, Macbeth and his witches. The real story. There were 2 of them. Shakespeare said there was 3. There was actually 2. They were mother and daughter. The land where they lived, you would now know as Hardmuir Farm, where you get the amazing strawberries. So, maybe there's good reason as to why their strawberries are so good. Oh, Scott's put a message up. What's Scott saying? Scott says his mother and father went up there once to walk one of their dogs, but the dog decided to stop before getting to the tower and didn't want to move any further for some apparent reason. So of course, the dog can't actually give us a reason, but yeah, that's interesting. So, maybe I edited it a bit too much, but the rest of it was just the same information in different wordings. So, it's a busy little hill. It's only a little hill, really. But you've got a mausoleum for 1850, the tower for 1827. Then you have the hill fort, potentially Bronze Age, but they've not actually found anything that they can carbon date to see exactly when. And a lot of the layers are disturbed because of the trees and the animals. And then a wee bit halfway off the top of the hill, you've got a stone circle, which I didn't even know was there. I knew there was a mausoleum there. And obviously, you can see the tower. But the hill fort, with its position, with the way that hill is, if you get right on the top, if you look down towards the coast, it is a perfect, clear line of sight all the way to Hopeman. Perfectly clear line of sight. So it's the absolute best place to put your hill fort if you're building one. You know. Stone Circle, I did find one website where there was a wee forum where there was people saying, no, it's just made up. It was the workers moving the stone from building the tower. No. The tower went up in 1827. The earliest registered record I could find about the Stone Circle was from 1815, which is before they even made the plans for the tower. So it's not the workmen moved it there and that was where they sat for their lunch, which is what was said on that other website. There is a henge up in the Oakwoods, right up on the brow of the highest point, and it's huge. When you look on the old maps, the henge that's in Quarrelwood or Quarrywood, some of them have it listed as the Danes' camp, the camp of the Danish, Viking site, wooden henge, the pagan site. These are all the different names I've seen for it on different maps. It is a lovely energy up there, and it's a bit weird too. If you're sensitive to energies, don't go on your own because it is a bit freaky. So it's a bit freaky if you're sensitive to energies. If you're as sensitive as a rock, by all means have a wander on your Todd, but don't be surprised if you get a wee bit freaked too. When I went, it was really, really odd because in the middle of the circle, it was quite a breezy day. It wasn't usual Elgin windy, but it was breezy. And in the circle, there was no wind. Nothing. If you stand in the middle and look around the outside of the ring, you'll see the odd patch where the trees are moving with the wind. And then about 10 foot further along, them trees aren't moving. And it's like, that's a bit weird. I don't know how that works, but that's what I was watching.